All right. Hello, my name is Sylvia Brown, and I am the community educator here at the Pittsburgh Poison Center. Today, I am going to be talking with Dr. Richard Moriarty, who is a former director of the Pittsburgh Poison Center. He was a Chief Pediatric Resident at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, an Associate Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine's Department of Pediatrics. And Dr. Moriarty was instrumental in the establishment of poison centers across the United States and for the development of the nationally known iconic poison warning symbol, Mr. Yuck. Hi, Dr. Moriarty, how are you today?
I'm fine, Sylvia.
Great. I would like to thank you for coming and talking to me today and telling us a little bit about how poison centers began and how Mr. Yuck began. So let's go ahead and get started. So what was the early structure of the Poison Center network?
Well, really, we have to go back to what was the structure of the Poison Center at Children's Hospital, because it was like a lot of other poison centers around the country. And basically what it was a telephone sitting in the emergency room. And when it rang, whoever picked it up was suddenly the Poison Center. And as a intern and resident at Children's Hospital 1,000 years ago, I was periodically at the Poison Center. And I had never had any training at all in toxicology. The whole science of toxicology really didn't exist at that point. And that bothered me because what we were relying on for information were some out-of-date toxicology books and file of products that usually was misfiled, and you had trouble finding the particular product. And I thought, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And so as an intern resident, I sort of, whenever I had a chance, would go over to the emergency room and try to get everything in order. But of course, if I came back a week later, it was now all screwed up again. And so it was a losing battle, and that you do the best you can. In those days, the Vietnam War was on, and they were drafting physicians, and but the government had a program called the Berry Plan that you applied for, and if you got it, it allowed you to complete your residency, and then you would go into the service for 2 years in your specialty that you'd been trained in. So it was a good thing to get. And all the guys in my residency group, we all got the Berry Plan. So when I was getting close to the end of things, as far as the residency was concerned, everybody was hearing where they were going except me. And finally, I got a letter from the Navy saying, you have another year's deferment. And I said, no, I don't. I want to go in the Navy and get this over with, because a friend of mine, who's still a friend of mine, we were going to, after the service was done, we were heading off to Seattle to set the world on fire on pediatrics, general practice. And they said, well, we don't really need any more pediatricians in the Navy right now. And so you're sort of stuck. And I thought, my God, what am I going to do? I don't have a job. And as luck would have it, a friend of mine from the medicine department at Pitt called me and said, what are you doing next year? I said, nothing. You want a job? I said, yep, I need a job. And he said, you want to do a fellowship in clinical pharmacology in the medicine department? And I said, sure. Okay. Because I was already beginning to get interested in that sort of thing. So I became a fellow in the medicine department and started learning something about clinical pharmacology. Along the way, and what had happened was the chairman of the P department, on my paper only, when they asked you how long your program was, he wrote a 3 instead of a 2. Okay, and that's what gave me the year off. All right. So halfway through my residency, the chairman of the department moved up to become dean of the School of Medicine, even though he made mistakes on things. And we get a new chairman, and I get a phone call, and it was from the director of the outpatient department at Children's, and said, Tim Oliver is our new chairman for Department of Pediatrics. And I said, never heard of him. Well, he wants to meet you. So I meet with Tim, and he said, I want you to be my first chief resident. I said, you know nothing about me. He said, well, people sort of think you're good. I said, they lie through their teeth. I said, but, by that time the war was over, so the Navy didn't need me at all. And I thought, well, I need a job again. So I thought, what the heck? let's be chief resident. And halfway through that year, Tim said, I want you to join the department. And I said, no, I'm going to go to Seattle and set the world on fire. I'm not really interested in academic medicine. And I said, if I stay here, what am I going to do? He said, you want to do something with that poison center. You keep talking about it. So here's your chance. Okay. And I thought, all right, well, let me see what I can do.
Awesome.
And looking at the setup, I thought the only way we can run a good poison center is to have a full-time staff. That meant 24/7. Mm-hmm. They had to be trained people. They had to be able to handle emergencies in a thoughtful, correct kind of a way. And so I thought, I want to hire emergency room nurses. Okay. And I also felt that we needed to get the word out about that there is a poison center, and you need to get a hold of it, because as a resident, we had a family who didn't call the poison center. The youngster had gotten into something that would have never ever caused any problem with the kid. They jumped in their car and they were making the mad dash to Children's Hospital, and they were T-boned by a truck. Yes. Fortunately, they were not seriously injured, but that was just the reason why we needed to get the word out. Call the poison center first before you do anything. Because as well, you know, the vast majority of things that kids and adults get into are not going to cause major problems. They can be usually handled easily at home. Mm-hmm. And very few folks have to come into the hospital. So there was this whole cadre of things going through my mind. I needed to hire people, and thinking about some kind of an educational program. And obviously, all that costs money, and I didn't have any money. And I thought, okay, we have foundations in Pittsburgh. And so I get a foundation book. And I thought, okay, I will work my way through the foundation book for Pittsburgh, the part of section on Pittsburgh, alphabetically, till I find a foundation that's interested in doing things with kids and doing something with medicine. Fortunately, the Allegheny Foundation came up pretty early in the game, and they met the criteria. So I wrote a letter. I knew nothing about writing a grant proposal in my life. I'd never done that. Just sent a letter and thought, okay, let's see what happens. And about 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the director of the foundation saying to me, Mrs. Scaife would like to talk to you. Now, you know the Scaife name. Okay, this is the first Mrs. Scaife. And so I went downtown and met Mrs. Scaife, and was sort of fascinated why she wanted to see this, you know, poor kid from Lawrenceville that has crazy ideas about the poison center. In those days, that was the old Children's Hospital. There were very few private rooms, and your kid needed to be sort of really sick to get a private room. And so even if your kid, the mother was Mrs. Scaife, you didn't get a private room. And one of her youngsters was in Children's Hospital, but in a ward. And in the bed next to Mrs. Scaife's kid was another youngster who had gotten into draining. Okay, a drain cleaner. And they were doing bouging at bedside, where they're putting down a weighted rubber tube to keep the esophagus open. Okay. And Mrs. Scaife was sitting there watching this happen. Okay. It's not the most pleasant procedure for a youngster. And it bothered her. And she said, we got to do something about that. My letter arrives. Okay. My life has been serendipity, really has been all the way through. You just happen to be in the right place at the right time, I guess. And she said, okay, you want to do something to develop for real poison center of children? I said, yeah. She said, that's going to cost money. I said, yep. How much do you think you need? I said, I don't know yet. And I said, I'm going to go back. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to put together a grant proposal, which I did, shipped it back to Allegheny Foundation. They were the first folks to fund it was a fair piece of change in those days. We're talking 1971. Okay, the first grant proposal was for roughly $300,000, which is a lot of money in 1971. And along the way, Mrs. Scaife opened the door to the Mellon Foundation. PPG found a bunch of things. Okay, she was our major benefactor. She's still alive, I believe. I haven't talked to her for a while. She's now living in New York. And I clearly have fond feelings for Mrs. Skate. If it weren't for her, you and I would not be talking. You would not have a job. Okay, and I would not have had a bunch of interesting years at the Poison Center. So now I had some money, and I could begin to hire people. And as I said, I went after emergency room nurses. We did almost self-training kind of a thing because there wasn't anything to send them to in terms of learning about toxicology. We were flying by the seat of our pants. As I said, I was concerned about people just making the mad dash to the Poison Center when they didn't need to. So it was clear that we needed to get an educational program going. You can jump in anytime you want to because I go on and on and on. I warned you earlier. Okay. And so there were a couple things that I thought about. Number one, we needed to get out the word that there was a for real Poison Center with for real people that were there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they sort of knew what they were doing. And if you had a problem, give us a buzz. So we had to get our phone number out to the world. But I was also concerned that at the time, and still, a number of places, the traditional warning symbol was the skull and crossbones, which just happened to be part of the logo for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and still is. Okay, and I thought, that doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. If we're trying to teach kids, to stay away from things, and there's what looks like the Pittsburgh Pirates sitting on a bottle or something, and I thought, okay, we need to think about that one too. And so as the grant came in, I was beginning to hire folks, and so I thought, okay, I need to get somebody that has a PR background, okay, and we need to sit down and figure this thing out. And the first thought was, well, let's see how kids see poisons. And so we were not, the PR firm that this fellow came from, Yuck Evolution, here in Pittsburgh, also had a branch in Florida, walking on the town. And so we did our studies there to make sure we weren't messing around with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And we started off basically with sort of preschool age kids and said to them, if you got into a poison, what would happen to you? And the recurring answers were, you die, you get sick, your mother would yell at you, okay? And we thought those are all pretty good things. We then worked with a graphic artist from the PR firm and said, can you put those ideas, death, sick, yelling, into some pictorial representation, which he did. We then went back to another group of kids with those three things, and the skull and crossbones, a stop sign, the happy day sign, and all that. And said to the kid, okay, which one don't you like? And the yelling face lost the popularity contest. I said, okay, fine. Now the traditional warning color was red. Well, come on, kids love red. Okay, just take a look at their toys and their clothing and on and on and on. So red ain't a real turn-off color for kids. And so we sat down with a bunch of sort of fluorescent colors, including red. And went again to kids and said, here's a bunch of colors. Give us a hint. What one don't you like? And the fluorescent green was the one that turned them off. And we said, oh, okay. Now we had a yelling yelling face, a background color. We put those two together, go back to the kids, and again with what's called crossbones and a whole 9 yards of other things. And the kids who looked at it and we said, which one don't you like? And they picked a yelling face on the green background. In fact, one of the kids in the study group said, that looks yucky. And we said, we got a name. We'll call it Mr. Yuck. But every Mr. Yuck sticker, and I hope it's still true, carried the telephone number of a poison center because we never claimed that it was going to keep every kid from getting into trouble. It's not going to do that. Childproof packaging doesn't always keep every kid from getting into that package. And I served on the committee, the CDC, the Food and Drug that brought you childproof packaging. I was one of the people that brought you those that you can't open. The kid can't, but you can. And so we said, look, no, this is not the cure-all, but it not only will carry the telephone number of a good poison center, okay, that meets certain standards, open 24/7, got people who know what they're doing, and you call them and they'll handle your problems, okay? But you need to know what to put it on. So we used it as an educational program. The first stickers, and hopefully some of them still today, on the reverse side of the sheet of stickers that we were handing out, listed the kinds of stuff that you needed to put the poison and they put the Mr. Yuck sticker on. And as I said, every sticker carried a phone number. And so we said, put one of the stickers on your telephone. In those days, we had dial phones, okay? We're talking 1971, 72 is when everything began. And so that was the beginning of the Poison Center and the educational program that blossomed into the whole Mr. Yuck program. Obviously, as we began to get some attention, okay, the first thing, we got national attention blocking with the magazine, the first article, national article. But Time magazine picked it up, all kinds of places picked it up, okay, and now we're getting national attention. And lots of other poison centers are calling us saying, hey, we like what you're doing, can we do it? And we said, no. I said, well, why not? And I said, because you're not doing it right. You have a full-time poison center staff? Well, no. I said, you got to have one of those. You got to train them. Are you open 24 hours a day? Well, I said, then you got to get to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These are the standards. Okay, if you want to use Mr. Yuck, you got to do it right. Well, I wasn't the most popular pediatrician in the country. There were people saying, oh, he just wants money out of it. I never made a nickel on Mr. Yuck. It belonged to Children's Hospital, not to me. But God's been good in other ways. I have no complaints. But I thought, I'm going to stick by my guns. And fortunately, my staff, which was an excellent staff, not only the folks handling the phones, but people who were doing things for me in terms of developing educational programs, connecting with the media, that whole kind of thing, knew exactly where I was coming from and what we needed to do. One of the things that we had some problem with was communicating with other hospitals when somebody got into a problem. Because it's fine if your youngster gets into something, they need to be seen, they live close to Children's Hospital, yeah, they can jump in the car and get there. But if they're in Butler, okay, or Punxsutawney and call us and we think they need to be seen, there wasn't a close poison center. And so we began the concept of member hospitals that we would send people to, except the problem there was they didn't want to keep all the files and stuff. And out of the clear blue, a close friend of mine, I had dinner with him last night. His brother was working for Xerox, and he was talking about telecopiers. I don't know if you know what a telecopier is. It was a precursor of the fax machine. And it was in its infancy, and you could send an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, but it took 4 minutes to do that. It's a little slow, but it was the blessing that we needed to have. Because if we installed a telecopier at the Poison Center and one at a member hospital, and if someone someone who got into something or their kid got into something needed to be seen, we could ship them to Butler Hospital, call Butler Hospital and say, hey, this is what's coming your way. We're now sending you what you need to be doing, okay? And you can call us when they come in. If they still have problems, let us know. But here's the deal. You got to send back to us how things turned out. And that enabled us to take a hard look at treatment regimens. Did they work or didn't they work? Did they need to be massaged a little bit or what have you? Also gave us a way to get statistics going so that we can now approach some companies and say, yeah, you got a problem with one of your products. You might want to rethink this. And so that was the whole thing. And the whole deal was in the infancy. Now, of course, we have, machines that, we have computers and we can send things in a flash. We have 800 numbers and all that. We had none of that in 1971, zero. But there were a lot of people that really wanted to get aboard, and as long as they were willing buy into what I felt was a reasonable way of doing things. They were more than welcome. We also, when somebody would call and say, hey, we're interested in getting involved with you guys, it sounds like you know what you're doing. We said, well, we're trying to figure it out. We're learning as we go along. At times we would discover that there was a town that had 7 poison centers in one city.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is craziness. I mean, to operate a good poison center is an expensive proposition. There's no way you can afford 7 of them. And so we say, well, you know, the first thing you got to do is figure out who's going to be the poison center for your neck of the woods, because we're not going to be dealing with 7 poison centers. That's ridiculous. And so again, I was not a very popular guy. He was shutting down poison centers. He said, no, we're shutting them all down. We're going to get down to 1 in your town, because that's going to make sense. And so that's how it all began.
Okay. Well, so let's talk a little bit about Mr. Yuck. You mentioned that he was originally developed for community education. What was the response from the community to Mr. Yuck?
Dynamite. Just absolute dynamite. We were fortunate enough to now be getting some more grants, and we did a TV commercial. Okay, we had both a 30-second and a 60-second one. Way back when I became friends with Fred Rogers when I was in high school at Shenley High, and worked with him on one of his early TV shows. And through Fred and a friend of mine at the time, who was married to Lady Aberland, okay, or Lady Aberland, we needed a woman's voice for the voiceover for a commercial, so I called Betty Aberland. And I said, she was in Denver at the time. I said, Betty, I can't pay you a lot of money. I can pay at scale, but could you do voiceover for us on our commercial? And she said, hey, I need to come back to Pittsburgh and see friends. Don't worry, I'll show up. She flew herself in, did voiceover. And that first commercial really was put together well. There was a second one, and that was put together even better. And the first thing I saw, well, I came into work on Monday, and my secretary said, we're getting all kinds of phone calls. I said, yeah, why? Didn't you watch the Super Bowl? I said, yeah. Well, didn't you see our commercial? As a public service announcement, our 30-second commercial was shown during the Super Bowl that year. Now, even in those days, it cost an arm and a leg to get on, that kind of deal, and it was done for nothing, okay, because it made sense, it was done well, and people wanted to sort of show off what was going on in Pittsburgh, which is fine by me. So we had, right from the very beginning, tons of support. When we began then to produce education programs for teachers, okay, I still run into, and they're still going on, okay. I'm sure, I know that you have a package of stuff that, for teachers, okay, to do their thing, and they do their thing, okay. You see they're still doing that. And they love doing that. Over the years, I've heard tons of stories from teachers that, so when they figure out that, I was the one that sort of got the whole thing going, thanking me. Okay, I said, now you shouldn't be thanking me, I'm thanking you, because you're doing the trench work. You're out there, okay, spreading the word. And the word continues to be spread. 3 days ago, a friend of mine sends me a newspaper article from Beaver, and it's the Penn State horticultural crowd or something is still teaching 10 years later, first graders, about pesticides and all that good kind of stuff. Well, they're not necessarily good. It's been just them, or it's spritzed with them. But it's still going on. And I'm amazed, absolutely amazed. It has a life of its own. So.
Awesome. So how has Mr. Yuck evolved over the last 50 years?
it's gotten to be put on things, okay? And at times I get phone calls from folks saying, "Can we use Mr. Yuck?" I said, I started the thing and all that, but no, you need to talk to children if you really want to use it. But there's a Frisbee team at Carnegie Mellon University, okay, that are the Yuck Frisbee team. There's an amateur hockey team who are the Mighty Yucks. I have a shirt. Actually, I paid for those shirts. So there's this other life of Mr. Yuck, okay? But that kind of use of the symbol hasn't really, as far as I can tell, impacted the true meaning or the true use of Mr. Yuck. So I'm not, saying to people, no, you can't, have fun with Mr. Yuck, because it's still getting out there and people see it and they still know really what it's supposed to be used for. Mm-hmm. So as I said, it's going to have a life of its own and probably go on forever and ever and ever. I keep saying to folks, I know what's going to be on my tombstone. Why are you laughing?
It's going to be on your... I think that's a great idea. I love it.
I'm sure somebody will put it on, which is fine with me. What the heck. So, yeah, it does have a life of its own, and I'm delighted that there's still poison centers around the country that are using it. As things moved into having a universal number for poison centers, that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. We obviously could have done that in 1971, or really during my stay at the Poison Center as director of it until '83. So yeah, they've gone with the flow of technology and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's good. I'm all in favor of it. And I hope that every sicker that is still made has the phone number for mm-hmm. Where they can turn to for help. Because that was one of the main ideas behind the educational program. Because as I said earlier, most things don't cause major problems. People panic, all right, and they do dumb things. Okay, I'm sure you've had some weird stories at the Poison Center of how people try to do treatment on their own. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's important that we continue to get the word out and say, call us, we're there. We don't care how crazy the stories are.
So let's do a couple of fun questions. What is one of your fondest memories of your time at the Pittsburgh Poison Center?
Oh my gosh. There were so many things. One crazy story. You probably don't know the TV program, and I hear it's coming back, To Tell the Truth. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're familiar with that one? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I was asked to be on To Tell the Truth. So I flew up to New York, and I had to come in a day early from the taping, which is fine because I got to do things in New York. So I go over to Goodman, Todman, or whoever the producer of the thing, and I'm sitting in the waiting area, and a secretary comes out and says, "Dr. Moriarty," and two people stand up. I'm looking at it, I thought, they're also named Dr. Moriarty, and one was lady. And I thought, they were going to be the imposters, but they were already playing the game. And I was there to coach them, okay, so that when they were asked a question, they would hopefully knew enough about Yuck and the Poison Center and how it works and what have you, so they could sound sort of truthful. And I, of course, had to tell the truth. But what was interesting, Bill Cullen, probably is dead, was one of the panel people, and he was from Pittsburgh. And so when we did the taping, he was told he couldn't ask any questions about Pittsburgh. That was off limits. It was fascinating. Here was, and at the time, a very popular TV program, playing the game correctly with the Poison Center. Okay, mm-hmm. And the bicycle, it not only appeared eventually, but it showed, it bicycled around for years. And I would run into people like, "Oh, I just saw you on To Tell the Truth." that was 2 years ago. They must be in summer reruns or something like that. So that was one of the fun things. There's just been so many things. I guess the thing that still touches me is just to run into people who know that I sort of began the whole thing, and they're thanking me for doing it. And I said, you know, you got a hell of a lot of people, other people to thank too. You know, there are an awful lot of people who are willing to go on a crazy ride with Crazy Moriarty and see what happens. That has been the quote fun part of the whole thing. That, you know, they're just people that are willing to do their all, particularly the folks that answer the phones. You know, they're there for a long time, sometimes through the night and everything else. And when we began to set up member hospitals around the country, we got a call one night from Buffalo, our poison center in Buffalo, New York. And they said, we're totally snowed in. No one can make it into the poison center. Can you handle our calls? And they turned their calls over to Pittsburgh because we were here. We weren't snowed, thank goodness. And people were, yeah, sure. You know, the staff said, hey, fine, send them our way. We'll do the best we can. So it's really all the people that I worked with over the years. Some of whom are still, you know, around and are friends. I have a lot of very pleasant memories.
Good. All right, last question. What legacy do you hope to have left?
Well, I hope that Mr. Yuck continues. I think it will. I think it's been ingrained in the psyches and minds of people. And so I think there's a willingness to continue education programs, particularly the teachers are so dedicated to these things. So I think as long as there's stickers floating around, there'll be educational programs. So I think that will continue. Obviously, I think having set a bit of a blueprint for what a poison center should be will continue to carry on. Because I can't imagine any other way that it can operate. Yeah, we've gotten better at getting information, and the whole field of medical toxicology has expanded tremendously. We were flying by the seat of our pants back in the 70s. That's going to continue to expand. I've always hoped that we would have more support from industry at times. We had some people, some companies that wanted to pre-print Mr. Yuck on their products. And we basically said, no, thank you, because we had no control over where the products were going. We didn't have a universal phone number. So, you know, what do you do? Is they call your poison center? I don't know your phone number for the poison center. And then we pointed out to them that we felt that it would open them to some liabilities that they would probably not want to do. So even the companies that really wanted to do something, we had to say no. And we said, we're not being nasty. Here's the reasons why we're saying it, because we just don't have the wherewithal for this thing to work on a national scale at that time. So now you could. So maybe somebody will. I haven't seen it yet. But we're doing better with child resistant packaging and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, Dr. Moriarty, thank you so much for joining me today to talk and to help us to celebrate 50 years of Mr. Yuck.
Well, I was 7 years old when I started the program. That's odd.